Most of us spend nearly a third of our waking hours at work. You'd think that would be enough. And our work is so important to us that it's often one of the first things that people ask you. What do you do? Personally, I think people should come up with better questions, but that's besides the point. The problem is when thinking about work and talking about work seeps into all of the other areas of your life, and it kind of takes over. Now, I'm not talking about that guy Bob that you're on a date with who has a really boring job in the city that he will go on and on about. Let's be honest, Bob can't be helped. But this video is for the thoughts about work and the anxiety about work that we all experience from time to time. Maybe you have a big deadline coming up, maybe you receive some harsh feedback, maybe you have an issue with a colleague and you find yourself biting your nails or grinding your jaw at 3 a.m. because you can't get work out of your mind. So I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks on what helps me to stop thinking about work when you're not at work. Oh, and Bob, or every Bob, if you're watching this, why not, here's a revolutionary idea, why not ask what they like to do outside of work? Tip number 1, off with the screens. It's so incredibly tempting when notifications are coming in to say you'll just have a quick look. The problem is your brain is already on overdrive, so feeding it more and more information and more things that you have to deal with is not going to be helpful. So when the time comes that you need to finish your work, log out of everything you need to log out of, turn off your notifications, turn off the laptop so that you're not constantly thinking about work. Step 2, because I know a lot of you are going to struggle with actually turning off that laptop. Before you do, you want to organize your next day and also get out of your head all of the things that might be stressing you later. So have a look at your calendar. What meetings do you have in for tomorrow? Do you have all your agendas? Do you know what you're going to talk about? Spend 10 minutes at the end of your day getting that into your head. Sometimes the stress comes from having a lot of different responsibilities. So what I find really helpful is pen to paper. Write down every single thing that you need to do. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to start working on that to-do list straight away. But most of the time I found once things are on paper, they seem a lot more manageable. That should help you get the niggling thoughts out of your head onto a piece of paper. And in fact, that's the first thing that you can look at the next day so that you can prioritize what you want to work on. The first two were the practical and organizational tips, but now you want to think about asking yourself for whatever challenge it is that you're dealing with, whatever you keep mulling over in your mind, think about, is there something that I can do about that right now? And only you can answer that question. So for example, let's say you've been procrastinating doing a report because you know that report is going to be really difficult. Or if you just haven't managed to finish what you needed to do and it's going to stress you out immensely because you're going to show up to that meeting and feel unprepared. Now, if there is something you can do about it right now, then the time that you've spent worrying is already occupying your brain space. And not that you should make this a habit, but provided this is not happening all the time, then actually do that thing. Start spending 5 minutes on that report, because channeling your energy onto actually doing something will help you get out of that spiral. Challenge yourself to just spend those first 5 minutes, see if you get into the flow, and then you want to do 30 minutes, that's great. Time box that time. But if there's something you can do that would immediately relieve that stress and anxiety, just do that for yourself. Most of us have a bit more flexibility now, and I'm sure that that's something that you can explain and ask to have a later morning one of the times because you ended up working later. So that's what you want to think about. Is there something that I can do about this right now? However, a lot of the times there's nothing you can do about it right now. And so you're just going to have to deal with all that stress. And my best tactic for that is tip number 4, distraction. This is one of my favorite tactics because, to be honest, after 5 minutes of focusing on something else, you're not really stressing about work anymore. It's just getting yourself to that stage. So one of my best tips is talking to someone else and promising that you're not going to talk about your problems, because if you're just talking about them again, it will turn into this endless loop. So you want to talk to them about something else, or you might want to watch a TV program or play some music, something that always makes you laugh and always makes you feel good. Generally, I find it helpful to have some hobbies that are scheduled right after my workday so I don't get caught up and I can actually switch off. I know some people find it helpful to mimic a commute if they're working from home, so they'll go for a little walk around the block, but whatever you're able to do to clear your mind. 5th tip, Fifth tip? Fifth tip is getting some exercise on a regular basis. And while you may only be able to do some light stretches in your room at 3 o'clock in the morning, exercising on a regular basis will help to release endorphins and release some of that stress that you have happening from work. So the more often you can actually break up a sweat, the more helpful that would be for regulating some of the stress and anxiety that you have from work. The important thing that I always remind myself of, and obviously this is not the case for nurses and doctors, but I do think about the fact that my job is not saving lives. So if it's seriously impacting your mental health, if you're really not able to function anymore, then you're also not being productive. So if you have a manager that you trust, definitely talk to them about how you can manage your workload. But you'll also find that sometimes they can take some of the biggest things that you're stressing about off of your plate or offer you some really helpful support for them. So you want to keep that communication open. If all else fails, have a 10-second dance break where you precisely try to copy every movement I do in this next dance.